Welcome to Analytics Nexus 2019, the premier virtual event for analytics best practices. This presentation is titled Implementing a Global Data Governance Program and is presented by Rickrood. This is just one webinar and a whole series of presentations that you have access to beginning today. A few quick housekeeping items before I introduce this presentation. At any time, you can interact with Rick or the other presenters with questions or comments on Slack. The Slack address for Analytics Nexus is analyticsnexus.slack.com, and you should have received an email invitation to join if you registered in advance. If you didn't receive that email, you can find an invitation to Slack in the menu below. And once you log in to the Analytics Nexus Slack workspace, you can find the channel for Rickrood to engage. In addition, you can engage with us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is analytics_nexus. And finally, for questions or comments on the Analytics Nexus event or Claravine, who is producing the event, feel free to email us at info@claravine.com. This session will be presented by Rick Rood. Rick has over 10 years of experience as a pharmaceutical, digital marketing, and analytics expert. His breadth of experience spans digital marketing strategy, web analytics strategy, data visualization, platform enablement, data architecture, KPI measurement planning, marketing research, campaign management, statistical modeling, and ROI optimization. He also brings an integrated end-to-end approach with extensive experience collaborating across internal and external cross-functional teams, including SEO, creative, media, user experience, personalization, statistical modeling, technology, and machine learning. He's focused on improving data-driven decision-making through technology enablement and optimization. Prior to joining GSK, Rick worked in the agency arena for companies such as Digitus Health as a senior analyst, and most recently for Indegene and SEMA as the senior director for digital strategy and solutions enablement. While there, he supported the global analytics implementation and reporting design for multiple pharmaceutical clients such as AstraZeneca, Shire, Otsuka, BMS, Pfizer, Mylan, and UCB. Most recently, Rick has over 4 years of direct experience developing and enabling an enterprise-focused Adobe Analytics solution architecture for a Fortune 500 pharmaceutical organization consisting of over 200 DTC and HCP branded and unbranded websites. Rick holds a BSE in Business Management from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rick for his presentation.
Greetings, and welcome to the Analytics Nexus webinar series. For our next topic, we're going to talk about creating a data-driven culture and the need for digital marketing data governance. First up, I'll give a little introduction and background about myself. Then we'll jump into an overview of the webinar today. Then I'll define data governance. And we'll spend a little bit talking about some of the challenges or hurdles that are realized that we need to overcome. And then the ultimate benefits that exist if you recognize a successful data governance model. And then we'll bring this back to how it relates to the journey of digital marketing data and where that model fits in. And then we'll talk about the people, process, and technology required to power that model. And we'll do a Q&A session and we'll go into closing. So my name is Rick Rood. I'm a Director of Engineering for the Customer Experience Measurement Optimization team here at GSK. My core focus is on the operational execution of our analytics platforms and standing up our data ecosystem to enable an event-driven approach to both optimizing our customer journey and empowering that downstream reporting impact across our collection of media tactics and drivers and our US websites that promote our pharmaceutical products to healthcare professionals, patients, and caregivers. I have been in the pharmaceutical analytics space for about a decade now. I have worked for agency vendors, consultant groups, and for pharmaceutical organizations. I started out my journey as a digital reporting analyst. I reported on media tactics and paid search clicks and impressions, visits to a website and resulting site engagement, how many videos they viewed, how many signups they did, how many coupons they downloaded. I've talked about people moving positive movement through the e-commerce funnel, all this to realize a customer's journey on a website across digital tactics. I quickly realized as a reporting analyst that the data was never actually perfect for the end state goals, and there was some consistency issues with naming conventions for how we named our tactics. And typically, these consistency issues impacted the end state goals of creating an optimization insights report, or visualizing the data, or setting up a dashboard, or even doing an ETL data transformation to send the data to a data warehouse. I quickly became fascinated with the operational execution of analytics platforms. I learned about how to tag our media tactics. I learned about how to set up analytics on websites like Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. I learned all about this in order to facilitate that downstream impact and to drive speed to optimization insights. That being said, today we're going to explore the journey of digital marketing data. And throughout our conversation, we're going to identify some areas that will benefit from a properly executed data governance model, driven by the right people and the right process and the right technology. Here at GSK, we're a customer experience focused organization. We are constantly exploring opportunities how to improve our customers' journey, whether it's in a digital or non-digital format. We strive to identify the right message for the right person at the right time. And we have a collection of digital tools that help us get there, including A/B testers, audience segmentation and audience profiling, site personalization, behavioral targeting and media retargeting, and some next best action statistical modeling techniques. Each and every one of these digital tools is driven by data. And that data needs to be thoughtful, organized, compliant, and governed in order to realize those end state goals and be successful in our approach. So what is data governance? How do we define it? Wikipedia defines data governance as follows. It is a data management capability that allows an organization to ensure that high quality data exists throughout its complete life cycle. There are 5 key areas that we need to focus on to ensure proper data governance exists. The data needs to be available and ready for use by our end state customers. It needs to be consistent and adhere to proper naming conventions. The data has to have integrity. People have to trust in that data. And ultimately, the data has to be secure. We have to ensure that we're not leaking data to third-party vendors or any authorized parties. A properly executed data governance program encompasses people, process, and technology. It takes all 3 of these areas to create a consistent and proper handling of our organization's data across the enterprise. Typically, when you embark on creating a data governance model, you quickly realize there's some hurdles or challenges ahead that we need to overcome. First and foremost, is there one source of truth? Typically, I find that there's numerous sources of the truth, and each group or department has their own version. Even different vendors and different groups might even use different analytics platforms which have different logic for how they track various events on site. So first and foremost, one source of truth. The next hurdle we typically encounter is disparate, disconnected data sets. The data is not connected in a meaningful way. Nobody ever thought that it had to be connected. I don't know that somebody that clicked on this paid search ad is the same person that came to the site and downloaded this savings card. Another key area is always multiple cooks in the kitchen. With any large organization, you have numerous groups all running on their various siloed ecosystems and running towards their goals. Each one's cooking up their own data warehouse, and each group has their own end state products that they're hoping to get out. There needs to be an alignment on these goals across departments. Without alignment, you're never going to have a successful program. Or you'll have numerous successful programs and each one works in a silo. In addition to aligning on internal departmental roles, there's also usually numerous external agency vendors, each working in a vacuum on their media tactic or on their marketing channel, and typically not all aligned to one way to track the data, not following a standard or convention, which leads to the data kind of going all over the place once it hits the analytics platform. And then finally, most of these groups that are working in vacuums don't have an understanding of the downstream impact of what they're doing. What is my job? How does it support? What comes next? What's this data being used for? Are you creating a PowerPoint report? Are you trying to do data warehousing and need primary keys? Do you need to connect the data to something? Are we trying to visualize it? What are the key points we need to track this data by to enable the outcomes that you're looking for? All of these challenges exist, but are surmountable with a proper model. And if you get to the point where you can surmount these challenges, there's some ultimate high-level benefits that you can realize with a successful model. First and foremost, you can elevate reporting quality. By providing your reporting analysts a data dictionary or a lexicon of how everything is tracked, they will quickly be able to dive into the data and come up with new and useful ways for how to optimize. By putting the control of the naming conventions in the hands of the digital marketers, you give them the power to name their tactics as long as they align to a standard or convention. Everybody knows what everything is called. And then by expanding and standardizing on the information that we track, i.e. more fields or dimensions that we track the data by, that's documented, we enable more ways to slice and dice the data, which will arrive at more granular insights and more ROI driving optimization opportunities. The second key benefit to recognize is you create time and cost efficiencies. By putting in place a digital marketing tracking request process with naming conventions and standards, the whole process of tracking and requesting tracking for my marketing tactics will move quicker. And then you'll get your tactics in market faster, aka less time doing operational execution and more time spent in production, getting exposures to your end-state audience and driving traffic back to your website for conversional goals. Secondly, you create time efficiencies because if you have a proper data governance model and everything's documented and everything flows the way it's supposed to, your reporting team is going to spend less time pulling and transforming that data and correcting the issues in it, and they're going to spend more time actually analyzing and providing actual analysis and optimization recommendations. And then lastly, by putting this proper model in place, you'll minimize or eliminate rework. And you'll have a consistent QA process to catch any issues before they go live, so you don't have to reflight things consistently in order to correct them. The final high-level benefit to recognize is that you'll improve strategic decision-making authority. We'll be able to empower our business partners to maximize their income generation potential and increase the visibility of digital tactic performance so we know what's working and what's not working. And by having that properly documented and governed model, you'll increase the consistency and confidence in the decision-making skills of your senior leadership team. You're going to allow them to make empowered, informed decisions and move forward with something that's going to benefit the business as a whole. And lastly, by creating this unified event-driven data architecture, you're going to aid the digital strategy of your marketers. You're going to empower them to know which tactics to put in market in front of which customers at which time that will deliver the right message to the right person at the right time. Next, we're going to talk about the typical journey of digital marketing data. What is digital marketing data anyway? Digital marketing data has its inception at the point of media flighting. So typical media traffic drivers are things like paid search, or display ads on websites, or emails you send out to target audiences, or different social media tools like Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. There are various tools you use to flight these tactics, like Google AdWords or DoubleClick for advertisers, or ExactTarget or Adobe Campaign for emails. And all these various tools flight these tactics in the web ecosystem, and people eventually search for it or are exposed to an ad, or they see an email and they click on a link in the email, and then these click-throughs ultimately take you to a website where you perform a series of engagements. These engagements are tracked via an analytics platform like Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. It is key when tracking these items on a website engagement that you understand what marketing tactics have driven them to your website. And this is where a proper data governance model comes into play. We can create a proper process to tag and track all these traffic drivers so that you can identify what traffic drivers are creating conversion on your website and optimize accordingly. All of these data sets, from media traffic drivers to resulting website engagement and conversions, then flow into a downstream device or tool. Some of these areas where this data will flow can be to a data warehousing situation or a data lake. It can flow into a Tableau dashboard. It can flow into an optimization reporting and actionable insights opportunities deck. Or it can be used to leverage site personalization and A/B testing. In all cases, though, where the data flows from one tool to the next or to its end state goals, an opportunity exists to properly govern the data and create the right models, people, process, and technology in order to support that downstream ecosystem. We're going to dive into particularly the area of creating a data governance model between the media traffic drivers and the website engagement. There are numerous ways historically that we have tagged tactics so that then we can understand what tactics are driving website engagement. In a vacuum, each agency typically would just tag their own tactics and flight the assets, and then they hit the website, and then you can go and look at the website analytics data and try and understand what tactics are driving it. At some point, we created Excel-based tracking request workbooks to kind of create data standards and conventions so that everything flowed uniformly. In our current model, we use cloud-based tools like Claravine to develop enterprise approaches to this. And I'll get into these in our next slide. So what are the proper steps to data governance along people, process, and technology? You need to make sure your audience understands the need to govern data. You ultimately need a data steward who's very aware of the strategy behind your marketing tactics to be put in place. This person will ensure that processes are adhered to, naming conventions are aligned, documentation is maintained, and all of our internal and external partners are trained. And this person can also be, or it could be a second role, of a QA technologist. But this role is really like a quality assurance role. Are my assets tagged correctly? Do they have the right tracking codes on them? is there a need for a quality assurance for specific tactics? Typically, emails require extra layers of QA, as the emails have to be built and there's multiple click-through links in any email, and there has to be a QA of each link to make sure it has the right tracking code. And typically there's a unique tracking code on every single link, which creates a lot of rounds of back and forth in order to drive a successful build of emails. The next part of this data governance is really the process. And so from soup to nuts, you want to interview all of your internal and external stakeholders and understand their key business tracking requirements. And you want to understand the downstream purposes of the data. Are there certain ways they need to track things? Are there certain business logic or conditions they need to identify items by? In my world, we have things like brand, side of brand, indication, franchise, business area, branding type, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on, but all these become different fields that we can track the data by. Once you interview those stakeholders, you're going to create the approach and document the naming conventions for your data taxonomy. You'll create the process steps in requesting tracking, and then you'll identify tools that need to be integrated, whether that's your media flighting tools or your analytics tools, or maybe the data needs to flow to a data warehouse. And then you'll identify the proper escalation procedures in order to correct things that are identified as incorrect. Then you need to maintain that tracking request model and QA process to ensure that things are consistent and accurate and aligned to this taxonomy. Naming conventions are key. If things go off the rails, it's very hard to tie things together, and then you spend a lot of time trying to clean things back up. And lastly, you need a process to educate your stakeholders, both internal and external. Maybe a bi-weekly check-in for Q&A, training videos, documentation, user guides, etc. You want to empower all of your stakeholders to become champions so they can go out and endorse the model you've built. And lastly, but most importantly, probably, is the technology that can fuel this data governance. Like I mentioned before, historically, we used to use tracking request workbooks in an Excel-based model, and somebody sat there and created each and every single tracking code for all of our partners. It's very manual, but it was the only way to ensure consistency. Fast forward to the present, and we have these awesome cloud-based tools that exist out there, like Claravine, that can create tracking codes at enterprise scale once it's set up for success. Mind you, you have to handle the proper requirements. You have to set the platform up so that you can track each channel or pattern uniquely. But once you get that there and you train all your partners, it's pretty much a plug and play tool. It's very awesome. And the other aspect of this technology, in addition to creating tracking codes for media tactics, you also need to ensure the tool auto integrates with your analytics platform, i.e. it sends those lookup codes, those tracking codes into the analytics platform so it can identify them when you hit the site. And lastly, that there's a process to send data feeds to a data warehouse. So every single tracking code that's ever requested needs to be basically put in a table and sent to your data warehouse so that the various teams can interpret and identify the data based on the conventions you put in place. This allows you to kind of get beyond creating taxonomy within the media flighting platforms and ensuring that all vendors are doing the same thing, and gives them a little bit of flexibility and leeway to create conventions as they see fit to drive their strategic interfaces, and allows you to still get the conventions you need to ensure the data is maintained a certain way. So we're reaching pretty much the end of our session, and we'll open up for QA in a second. But in closing, I just want to call out that a data governance model is critical to a successful digital analytics program. You have to put standards in place in order to ensure that the downstream teams have the tools they need to do their job. You want them spending more time providing actual insights and less time transforming the data to make it usable. It is also equally critical to consider your key business requirements of your stakeholders when implementing a data governance program. If you don't take into mind what all of your various stakeholders need, people are not going to use the tool that you set up, and then it will be a failure. Another key area is the understanding of the downstream impact that this data governance you're setting up has on reporting and data warehousing and site personalization. You need to understand the why and the so what of what you're doing in order to set it up successfully. And lastly, you need to have the right people, processes, and technology in place in order to reduce the costs and increase the speed to market to drive actionable analysis across your enterprise. This is key. It's all about that end state reporting and optimizing your tactics in market. That way you reduce time, you reduce costs, and you increase revenue. If all this is successfully put in place, then you can prove the viability of your digital model. I hope this has been helpful to you, and there is a Slack channel for Q&A. I would invite you to reach out and connect with me at any time, either by email or LinkedIn, or for the purpose of our Analytics Nexus webinar, contact me on the Slack channel. You can look me up by name. I want to thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you taking a moment to listen to what I have to say. I look forward to hearing back from you. Have a great day. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Rick for sharing this material. I thought the presentation was really great. And just a reminder for our guests, you can engage with Rick with questions or comments at his channel on the Analytics Nexus Slack. Thank you.